I am a book lover. I love books. I collect books. I review books. I actively seek communities that talk about books, and I curate events that are book related.
So your world revolves around books. Books
Yes.
in events, books in hangouts, books in your leisure time. How did you get yourself here? How did you find yourself loving
Okay.
books this much?
Yeah. I would attribute this to COVID in 2020 when everyone was just staying indoors. That's when my reading really picked up. I first started reading as I first started reading for leisure around when I was about 24, almost a decade ago. And then I was just a casual reader, one book this month, I skip another month. And then in 2020, I came across a community of other book lovers on Instagram, the community that is now known as Bookstagram. I'm sure you've heard about it. So I changed my personal page into a Bookstagram. I deleted all my personal photos and then I started posting reviews. And then I started getting followers of the same kind, people who also review books, post about books, and then the rest is history. It's been now about 4 years actively talking and posting about books. So yeah, that's how it happened for me.
Okay, we'll take a tour on your shelf. But
Yes.
before we get there, I just want to know, tell us more about Bookstagram.
Okay. So like it's self-explanatory, books Instagram, so Bookstagram, just a community of readers all over the world who create content about books. It could be ranges from book reviews or just posting about the books they're enjoying or just bookish event like what I do. It's just a community of book lovers who actively post content about books on Instagram.
You've spoken about events.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
So the event I'm talking about is called BookstaMeet KE. I've been running it since August 2021. It's a book that combines books and music, and it's meant to just grow the readership in Kenya, in Nairobi specifically, because I host all my events in Nairobi. We come together to exchange book recommendations. Sometimes we have themes. If you're keen on reading about maybe from a particular part of the world, or if you're keen about reading a certain genre, I curate my events that way so that it brings together people to exchange recommendations while at the same time discovering amazing Kenyan artists because we usually have a live performer at every event.
Okay.
Yes.
What would you say has surprised you with BookstaMeet KE?
Honestly, I would say the reach because sometimes I get people in my audience and I immediately panic. I feel like asking you, how did you hear about my event? As much as I post it online, I use a ticketing platform. So, of course, it will reach some people, but some people come to my event who I would not ordinarily expect to be interested in either books or Kenyan music. When I started the event, I meant it for a niche audience, just people who are in the book reviewing community in Nairobi, but it has since grown to people who are just curious, want to increase their readership, or they're interested in the other side of the event, Kenyan music, live music performances. So to answer your question, just the reach and the kind of the audience is forever evolving. Sometimes I get people from a much younger generation, older generation, even people who are not even Kenyans. So yeah, just that has been surprising.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you love art. How would you describe your relationship with art?
Um, I love I am a very aesthetic. I love things that please my eyes. If you can tell from my bookshelf, I love colorful things. I won't even deny the fact that a lot of my book choices are influenced by how pretty the book looks. So even with my own events, I try and host them at places where they have art collections, like an art gallery or a curio shop, for instance. So I feel like if you're surrounded by art, it inspires you. There's a writer inside you, there's a poet inside you, and you just need to be surrounded by things that bring that out.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, now that you've spoken about how beautiful the shelf looks,
Yes.
what's on your shelf? Take us through the shelf.
Okay. I love doing this tour for anyone who's interested. And I think I arrange my shelf too often. I switch it up often, but this is my favorite setting out of every single model I have tried. I have currently arranged my shelf in sections. Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, they're sectioned according to the regions. So, up here, these are West African reads. A bulk of my books are from Nigeria, Ghana. So, that's this part. And then,
Is there a particular reason to that?
yes, the reason why I gravitate a lot towards these books is, first of all, when I started reading, these are the good books that were accessible to me. When I say accessible to me, I mean the bookstores in Kenya used to stock a lot of these books. So when I started reading books from West Africa, they are the books I could access easily, and I grew to love those kind of stories. Yeah. So I have quite a collection of West African books. Over here, if can you help me just move this flower?
This one?
I have Toni Morrison. And this is a challenge I did last year where we were doing something called the Completist Challenge. I had a group of about 20 people reading all of Toni Morrison's work in 2022. And the reason I picked this author is because there was this narrative about Toni Morrison being an intimidating writer for a lot of people. A lot of people had read Beloved, maybe, but not the other books. And I just wanted to demystify, because you cannot dismiss an author without ever trying to get through their works. It was a very successful challenge. And we tried again this year with Abdul Razak. That's why I have all his books over here. It's still an ongoing challenge.
Wow.
Again, another author who not a lot of people had heard about him before he won the Nobel Prize for Literature. So that's that section. And then over here, it's Black American authors. Yeah, just some of these books are quite popular. Like Girl, Woman, Other is one of those books where a lot of Nairobians read in 2020. It's over here. Silver Sparrow, The Color Purple is a very popular book. So these are Black American books. And then over here, let me just move this so I can show. This is my favorite section over here.
Wow.
This one. These are Caribbean books. Caribbean books have become a recent favorite for me. I think one of the first Caribbean books I ever read was Here Comes the Sun by Nicole Dennis Penn. Throughout my time reading Caribbean literature, I'm still surprised at how similar our cultures are. If you remove the names and the setting, you'd think you're reading about someone in Kisumu or Mombasa. We are very similar in our culture. And I like that they explore themes that people skirt around. Like, for instance, mother and daughter relationships are a big part of Caribbean literature. So I've really enjoyed my time. I try to participate in a challenge called Read Caribbean every June. It's a challenge that was started by a bookstagrammer called Cindy. So I'm having a good time exploring Caribbean literature. And then Over here, I have some books. This is the only book that's not fitting in that category, but the rest are Asian books.
Okay.
Yeah, Southeast Asia. Just funny enough, these are also some of my 5-star reads.
Okay.
Asian, but also my 5-star reads. This is from Egypt, so I think it belongs up there. And then this is a section I'm quite embarrassed about.
This?
I feel like, yeah.
Okay.
I feel like I'm going to ruffle some feathers. But these are books that I started to read and did not finish.
Okay.
So I have not given up on them. I believe most of these books, I read them at the wrong time. I will tell you for sure, this book, I read it at the wrong time. I was kind of going through a reading slump, and I was reading it with 2 more people. I think they finished. I did not. So I've put them here because I'm willing to give them another chance. This one I was reading with a friend of mine, and then she ditched me.
Okay.
And then I felt lonely. I didn't want to read alone. So I'm just looking for someone I can finish to read and discuss with. But I am actually really enjoying it. And then,
So the relationships in the books are also serious.
yes,
Okay.
they're serious. If you ditch me, I'll feel differently about the book.
Okay.
I really love reading with the community, whether it's book club or buddy reads, which are smaller. So yeah, these are the books I'm willing to get back to soon.
Okay.
And then at the back, it's just, I have a story for this section also. Can you help me, Kidogo? Yeah.
Let me
So
hold this.
this is a section that has my hardbacks. Until recently, I used to steer clear of any hardback book. I am a paperback girl. I used to feel like hardbacks are bulky and hard to handle, and I used to feel like I would not take care of the sleeves, and then they'd end up looking terrible. But over the last 1.5 years, my hardbacks collection has grown. So like the conversation we had before when I was telling you, don't ever say, I don't do this as a reader, because your reading tastes, your preferences change over time. So now I actively seek hardback books.
Okay.
So yeah, these are my hardbacks. I've put them there because I think they look a good stacked up. And then over here is my Kenyan and some East African and Southern Africa, like South Africa, Zimbabwe. Yeah. So that's my collection for that section.
All right.
And then right here is an adventure waiting for me, because these are all my unread books.
Okay.
I haven't counted them recently, but I have quite a number of unread books. If I wanted not to buy books for the next 2 years, I would, but then I won't, because I'm a book lover.
So I want us to go through the books, but before we go there, there is a section you've ignored. I've seen this, and I realized that in one of your posts on your Instagram, you talked
Yes.
about TBR. What is
Yeah.
that, and how did you find yourself there?
Okay. TBR is a to be read list. At some point, I noticed this was getting out of hand. The number of books that I have not read, and I'm actively still collecting books. Some books here are as old as 6 years on my shelf. And I realized I will never read this books unless I do something that makes me, I have to read this book within a certain period. So I created this. This is just a list of these books. They have reduced, but it used to be full, of all the books that I haven't read. I haven't also updated it. So every month I blindly pick one book from there, just shake and pick a book from it. So I am forced. I use the word forced lightly because eventually I'll read the book, but it just makes me read the book sooner. For like this month, when I did the TBR jar, I collected this book. And it's one of the longest sitting books on my shelf. I think I bought this maybe in 2015. So if I didn't do this, I would never
It would
have
have been
picked it.
perhaps sitting somewhere.
And I feel like this book deserves a fair chance. It's a classic. A lot of people who have read it that I know have loved it. So, yeah. And then that brings me to this section. It's the books that I'm planning to read very soon. So it's my immediate TBRJ. That's what I call this basket.
Okay.
Like, for instance, this is my current read. We're reading it for my book club called The Indulgent Bibliophile.
As long as.
As long as the lemon trees grow. It's based in Syria. I've just started, like I'm just 30 pages in and loving it. And then this is a book I'm buddy reading with my friend called Jeanette. I do a
Okay.
lot of buddy reads. Like every month, I think I have 2 or 3 books I'm reading with a friend. So yeah.
So how many books are you reading at a go? Because I'm looking at this to be read.
Oh,
Seems like there's something going on with each and every one of these books.
okay. I'm actually not a multi-reader. I tried that and it doesn't work for me. I need to focus on one book at a time. I'm actually jealous of people who can do that. Read multiple books at the same time.
Yeah.
I notice it's distracting for me. It gives me unnecessary anxiety. So I just like to focus on one book. The reason I've put this here is just to give me pressure. Because like now I know I need to read these books either this month or next month. Seeing them here reminds me, don't pick another book from there, you have this waiting for you. So yeah, I read maybe, the only time I do multi-reading is if I'm reading a physical copy and an audiobook, but never 2 physical books at the same time.
What's your preference between physical, audio, digital, Kindle?
Obviously, physical.
Why?
I have grown to love audiobooks because I feel they are time saving and they are also very, it's a very inexpensive way of keeping up a reading habit, because books are expensive. Let's be real, especially in Kenya, and newly published books are very expensive. So if you can find an audiobook platform that works for you, I use one called Scribd, or it's now called Everand. You pay about $10 per month and you have access to multiple books. So yeah, I prefer physical copies any day, but I also love audiobooks, especially those that are narrated really well. I love reading memoirs, especially and autobiographies on audio.
Okay.
Yes.
Tell me about this spillover. There looks like there is a spillover over
Yeah,
here.
so this is my daughter's growing book collection.
This one looks like it's all grown if it's for your daughter.
Yeah, she likes stories. I can't wait for her to be able to read stories by herself. She's 5, so right now I read the stories for her. She likes bedtime stories. That's her favorite time to read, unlike me who likes to read in the morning. And yeah, I just love to see that she enjoys the bookish world without me coercing her. It's beautiful to watch. She has preferences like me. She likes very animated kind of books. And then she also likes books with happy endings.
Okay.
So I'm learning to know her taste, and it's exciting. I think it brings out the child in me also. So
How different is her taste from yours?
um
What are some of those things you thought I would direct her like this as the mother, but she's
Yes.
chosen to go that way?
Yes, I noticed she's a very, I think maybe it's just an issue of her being 5-year-old, but she likes a lot of books to do with adventure, as opposed to, I remember when I was younger I used to gravitate towards book that are to do with friendship or family, or but for her it's like if any book about we are going to the jungle or we are going to, so she likes adventurous books. I think that's also why she likes books that are visual. They have a lot of drawings in them. So yeah.
How would you compare your relationship with her with regards to reading versus your relationship now with your parents?
Oh wow, okay. I have trauma for leisure reading because when I was in primary school, I don't think it was a priority for us and my siblings to read for stuff that are not exams related. So whenever I picked up a book to read and I'm not being examined on it, I used to feel like I'm wasting time or I'm disappointing my father. So I had to outgrow that. When I was about class six, I used to have a best friend called Shakila, and she used to read for leisure. She used to read the Goosebumps books and the Nancy Drew. And I pretended to like those books so that Shakila can like me. I duped her, but then eventually I saw even for me, these books are more than just leisure. Like they grow even your writing and imagination and all that. So I would say my relationship with her right now, as compared to when I was younger, it's so different because for me it was don't read a book that's not helping you to pass exams. And for her, is she literally picks a book by herself and she wants to read because she likes the story. Nothing to do, yeah.
What do you think that has done to her?
I don't know. I feel like it takes a certain kind of intentionality to raise a child that's curious like mine. You have to keep her mind engaged. So I like that she is able to see other worlds from books because I cannot expect her. This scope is very small for someone who just goes to school and lives here with me. She is able to see other 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 worlds. Like even she's never been to a jungle, or she's never been to what can I say, like the mountains or a zoo or something like that. And she can see that and know that there's something else apart from what you can see right here, right now. Yeah.
I want to take you back because of a term you've used. Because and I'm not saying I'm not going back to it to put you on the spotlight, but I'm just going back to it to understand because you've used the word trauma,
Yeah.
and it to me it's such an intense way of looking at it. Why
Yes.
would you look at it as traumatic?
I think maybe I used a word that's a bit alarming, but then I cannot explain why I only started to read way into my first job. When even in high school, I had several opportunities to get into the reading culture, something that was just ingrained in me. Like this is a time wasting activity, and I had to be very very deliberate for me to see it differently. So maybe using the word trauma is a bit shocking, but to me, I can actually attribute my late bloom, getting into books much later in life, to that not being allowed or not
Yeah.
being encouraged to read for leisure when I was younger.
Do you wish that was done?
Yes, I do. I think that's why I'm trying to do something different for my daughter.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what are which are I want us to go through some of the books that have been most impactful to you and just see what lessons can we pick from them and just understand what are these beautiful pieces of knowledge that we can pick from Joan's bookshelf.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you talk about impact, the
Yeah.
first book that comes to mind is A Thousand Splendid Suns by Khaled Hosseini.
All right.
And this one, I would pick it for the simple reason that it's the first book I ever bought for myself with my first salary at my first job. I felt like I have a little bit more money to spend. So I went and got this book, and my life has never been the same. I've been buying books for myself ever since. And I love this story so much. It was very moving. I'm sure you usually see this quote somewhere, like it says, like a compass pointing north, a blaming hand always finds a woman. I've not said it in verbatim, but it resonated with me so much. And I have read many books that have similar themes, but no book has ever moved me as much to date. So this is the most impactful book in my shelf because it literally changed my reading life.
What is that thing? Because I
Yeah.
want to get deeper to understand
Yeah.
what was that thing that moved you? What is this story? Give us a brief synopsis to
So this book is about a woman named Miriam. She lives in a very strict Muslim environment, where it's there's a lot of oppression in terms of dressing, in terms of your mannerisms as a woman, and it just takes us through her life and being in a household that she didn't grow up in a nice household, and her marriage was also not a rosy one. So just taking going through the motions of how she overcame these such environments and how she kept hopeful through it all is a story for the generations. You've had a story like this, you know someone who's been through this, and I feel like this book would move anyone. Even if you have a heart of stone, this is a book that would move you. So yeah, that's just the story. I read it a long time ago. I'm planning to reread it next year because it's been a long time. And I don't want to look like a fraud. You asking me about a book and I can't give you the details. So I want to read it so I can continue shouting about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm seeing it has gotten very good reviews, and actually, Khalid Husseini has in a couple of the people I have spoken to on this podcast. They've really echoed his
Yes.
work and his writing and the depth of the story. But to you, what is that thing that now you'd say got it so personal to you that
Yeah.
you'd now look at the impact it had on you as a person?
Yeah. I feel like Khaled Hosseini writes emotions so tenderly. Even when she describes how someone is reflecting on something that made them happy, or she's reminiscing on something that made them sad, you can actually feel like you're there with that person. He writes emotions very tenderly. You're able to feel it without it shocking you, you know? So I feel like that's the kind of writing I resonate with most. Like, be tender with the emotions. It's a traumatic book. A lot of bad things happen to these people, but you are able to feel it in a human way. Yeah.
Religion is a very dicey
Yeah.
space, especially. I had somebody say the other day people kill for three things: religion, and politics, and love. And sometimes when you read about other religions and things like that, people tend to read them with a bias, like
Yeah.
these are not my kind of people. What is it that was so connecting to you with that book, with the story,
Yeah.
despite it being something
Yeah.
you were experiencing maybe religiously for the first time, or something you're
Okay.
getting to interact with at a level you had not interacted with before?
Okay.
Yeah.
I would say it's the what connected the story to me is the woman aspect more than the religious aspect. Yeah. What you have to go through as a woman living in that kind of environment. So I feel like being a woman is is eerily the same everywhere in the world. Doesn't matter your religion, your background. So I connected most. It's the aspect that brought it home for me, relating to another woman's predicaments. Yeah.
You also subtly a champion for girls and women.
Not
How
subtly, not subtly.
fully?
Fully.
Yeah, okay. So you are an advocate and a champion for girls and women. What is it that you're looking at as a society, and what would you want to see? And
Yeah.
especially when you're looking in the relation to this, when you're talking about,
Yeah.
it gets to a place where it stop being a religious affair.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
about that person being from a different tribe or a different race or a
Yeah.
different religion.
Yeah.
What is it that you're looking at?
Yeah, I will answer that question very specifically because a lot has been said about feminism and about what authors can do in regards to pushing it forward. But I would say that for me as a reader, I have read so much about oppression for women. At this point in my reading, I just want to read about women that are giving, authors that are giving women more agency in terms of decision making, in terms of choices with their bodies, in terms of resistance, you know. So I chose to answer that question in that aspect because it's a conversation I've been having with my friends. Some of us are finding it difficult to read books that are about, I'm in a polygamous marriage. I have no way of living this. I'm in an abusive marriage. I have no way of living this. But there's a generation, I won't say of upcoming writers, but even writers are evolving in terms of how they address these things. There are things that are going on and they will go on forever. But can you give these people a voice that's different from all the things we've been reading about for years? So that's what I'm looking for.
So particularly, what are you now doing as Joan? What are you doing in that space?
Is talking about it helping? Because me and the community around me, just my friends, even not people who are necessarily readers, I believe just talking about these things openly and saying what you think you can do in your own capacity, and refusing to be shut up when someone says, well, you're being too much, or you're being toxic, or do you have to talk about this here? This is a happy place. Why would you talk about oppression here? Refusing to be told not to talk about the things that bother you. That's what I'm doing.
Is that part of some of the events? I'm just curious to want to know more,
Yeah.
and just thinking, how can the rest of us know more about what you're doing, and
Yeah.
how would you want the rest of us to participate in some of the conversations that you've started, and even
Yeah.
the initiatives that you're driving to just enhance the voices of those women?
Yeah. I don't want I don't want to look at it as I have an initiative. I think just my own personal, let's say even my own creative outlets. When I do my book reviews, I highlight some of these themes that should be talked about more. When I have the conversations with my bookish community, we talk about these things. I don't actually have an initiative that is official, that this is something that Joan is doing in this regard. But I believe in the same way that I refuse to keep quiet about things that bother me. What other people can do is just let people talk about the things that are bothering them.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
you don't need to. If you're convicted about what you believe in, you should allow other people to be true to their convictions as well.
Yeah.
Shutting people down because of they have a different opinion from you is very oppressive. So that's just, I feel like just let people talk about
Yeah.
what
Let
bothers
people
them.
be.
Let people be.
Awesome.
What bothers you is not what bothers me, right? But if I let you talk about your thing, I am able to see from your point of view because you have lived that experience. I would not know what you're going through if I didn't give you an opportunity to speak out, right? Yeah.
Wow. I want to move on to the next one because I have a lot of things I'm curiously building in my head on that topic, but I'm
Yeah.
sure maybe we'll also have a chance to talk about them as we journey through
Yeah.
yourself. So now the next one is
Okay. The next one I'd say the whole section of the 3 books, but especially
one.
yeah, those are books by Jennifer Makumbi. But maybe I can talk about Chintu.
Chintu. It's read
Yeah,
as Chintu.
Chintu is a Ugandan word, so the K is CH.
Jesus.
Yeah, it's a very impactful book, and the reason I love this book so much because it's the first time that I read a book that's unapologetically African. Jennifer writes what she wants to write. You will get along with it. she offers no explanations. She does not paraphrase. She does not there's no pandering. If you get it, you get it, you know? And I've come to love all her books are written like that. All the 3 books I've read by her. But I've also come to find a lot of books that are written in this way. Caribbean literature also, they're very unapologetic about the way they write. And I believe in understanding things in their context. You don't have to understand the Buganda word. You don't have to understand the patois. If you're understanding the story, you will get the context and you will understand the word. So I just love it for the simple reason that the story is written for us. Actually, Jennifer writes, she says she wrote this book for Ugandans. So you get with the program. Yeah.
I see. When you say unapologetically African, why is that statement sounding, you look like, yes, this is how I want books to be written?
Yeah, that's actually how I prefer my books now.
Why do you feel like some of us are apologetic?
Because if I may give a simple example, books that were written in the 18th century or 19th century that are now considered classics, we do not speak like that. We do not say they and thou and all that. But no one comes and say, here's a glossary of all these words that I put. This is what they mean, and no one comes to explain to you. So I believe any book that's written in English, you're already writing in a language that's not natively ours, yeah? So why again should you give an author the work of trying to explain so that you understand the setting and you understand the language? You don't have to, not every book is written for you to relate to.
So what's the story of Kintu? What is the story about?
So Chintu it's a multi-generational saga. It's a book about a family trying to navigate their way through a family curse. So it started with someone who hit a child. This is not a spoiler because it happens very right off the book. He hit a child on the head, and then the child died. And then the child was from how can I say? The child was not his. And then the man the father of the child said, "Oh, I will release a curse to your whole family." And now this is a book with very many characters from the same family, and how this curse manifested in different areas of their lives. And at the end of the book, there is some sort of coming home or a reunion, trying to break away from this curse. So it's a very beautiful book. It's a very humorous book. It's one of my favorite books ever. Yeah, that's what it's about.
To that person who is listening to you and wondering, what is that thing that you can now push to someone and say, this is the part I think you will enjoy most in that book?
The part.
Yes.
There's a part where there's like a bachelor's party. It's like a man is going to get married. So there are other men who are seated with him in a room, and they're trying to give him advice on how to navigate his first night or just marriage in general. I have read that scene so many times. I've not reread this book, but I've read that scene so many times. When I need a good laugh, I just go to this section of the book and read it. I think it's my favorite part, and a lot of people's favorite part. Yeah.
When you reflect on that from that African context, girls, there was that conversation of girls were supposed to sit with their mothers in the kitchen, and throughout from the time I think they started menstruating, somebody deliberately was talking to them about life, about womanhood, about. And for a very long time, as a man, and a few of my friends, I won't generalize and say most men, but from my context and a couple, we felt it was unfair. The woman was prepared and was taught, But the man was not prepared and taught. The man was supposed to be allowed to hunt and prove. And I feel like when these people now went into a house setup, they were not on the same page. Somebody was more prepared than another person. But when you're looking at it as a girl, and now today you also a parent to a girl,
Yeah.
what does this bring to you? What reflections do you have in your upbringing when you're getting to understand yourself as a woman and
Yeah.
getting yourself into that space where you're aware of certain things going through menstruation?
Yeah.
How was it for you, and how do you think those have influenced how now you're looking at your little girl?
I would say moving from womanhood being a taboo subject to it being something people can openly talk about at the level your child is ready for. Also, don't rush the child, you know. I feel like it's the most beautiful thing that has happened in advancement, because I personally, my experience was different. I feel like because I have an older sister and we talk openly, I was not very deprived of information I was curious about. And even my own mother, of course there's there's a thin line of what you can learn from your mother and what you can learn from your girls. So I am lucky enough to have grown up in the age of the internet and the age of open communication. Even right from high school, we used to talk about these things openly, things we were curious about, things we were scared about. Of course, on the flip side, people who are growing up after us, they have access to such information too early. Some of these things they cannot even process, but you already have an overflow of information. So I think as a parent, it's just for you to try and filter what information your child gets at what stage, and just be aware of, don't not like the olden days, you can't hide your head in the sand anymore.
Where is the first place you learned about menstruation, for example?
In primary school, in class 6, I think, they used to put us in a class and tell us this thing is coming. At that time it used to feel like a monster. They're scaring you. This thing is coming, you need to get prepared. And I have a very vivid memory of this how they used to conduct this thing. I hope they're doing it differently right now. I don't know if it's something that was done by the Ministry of Health. I'm not sure who was doing that exercise. But then we are collected as girls and we are put in a room. We are shown this is how a menstrual cycle works. This is what you should be expecting. These are the things you will be needing when you're here. This is how you should take care of yourself during that time. It was it was a very good way of getting us into it. But there was the afterwards. Now the boys have nothing to do. They've been sent to play football because there's nothing to do. The girls are holed up in a room. And then you leave that room, you're given sanitary towels to carry home. That was the end of the exercise. You come out of that class, the boys are outside laughing and cackling and teasing you. All of us are putting our sanitary towels like this. You can't wait for the end of the day so that you go and hide this thing, because it was a thing of shame back then. This is in the 90s. So as much as they were giving us education, the after effects, like, you know, the girls are being educated. The boys, to them, it's just, oh, these people are just now, they're going through changes. We can tease them about it, and all. It made me not look forward to starting, honestly.
Why do you think it felt uncomfortable leaving that class?
Let me tell you, Mike, having boys trying to peep into a class to see what you're being taught about, they're already giggling outside. And when you come outside, even before it's your time to learn, you've seen this happening to other girls. You know, it used to be such an embarrassing thing, because just because you have seen what happens to girls who mistakenly like soil their clothes in class, and how it's a whole thing. For girls, it's like we're trying to cover you, we're trying as to draw as little attention to you as possible. But for the boys, it's so funny to them, and it's something they'll make fun of you for the rest of your time. You're in class 6. For the rest of your time in school, this is your identity
Yeah,
now. This is
yeah.
your identity. You're the girl who soiled herself in class.
Yeah.
And it will forever be your identity. I remember very vividly, there's a girl who transferred schools because she could not stand it, the ridicule.
As I conclude that, do you sometimes think about that? Now you have a little girl coming up, and
Yeah.
I hear you
I'm
talking
scared. I want her to remain 5 years forever, but yeah, it's inevitable.
Yeah.
That I feel like I have a soft landing because I already have a niece who's 10. I'm trying to go through the emotions with her. I try to put my mind where I was when she's 10, you know, when I was 10, I mean, so I can see where she's at mentally. So in a way, I feel like I have a soft landing with my own daughter Nadia, but I won't lie, it scares me. I want her to have a different experience. I want her to have an easier time. I want her to have all her questions answered at her level. So yeah,
These ones are curious.
they are.
They're
I
asking
know.
questions you didn't have courage to
I
ask when
know,
you're
I
that
know.
age.
Yeah, I keep saying she's my biggest critique. She's my biggest like, she asks me questions no one else would ever ask me, and I have to stay ready. And you can't lie, and you can't scat around. So yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Sure. I want to move on to the next one. Which one is it?
I'm going to pick this one because it's the first nonfiction book I ever chose to read. I was biased with the choice because I love Trevor Noah. I used to have a huge crush on him when I was younger. But then I also love his comedy. So when he put out a book, I wasn't sure if I could read a nonfiction book, but I knew it would be funny for sure. So when I read the memoir, I loved it so much. And it's impactful because it made me see you can actually read memoirs, you can actually read nonfiction. It's a book I recommend a lot. Sometimes I find that I cannot recommend books to men so much, but this is a book I can recommend to a man easily without thinking about it.
Okay.
But for the fear of not recommending the same book very many times, I try to also recommend Let Love Have the Last Word by Common. Common, the rapper, has a memoir. Yeah.
So
But
what is it about Born a Crime, before I go to Common,
yeah.
that, okay, I know there's this crash and all that, but now into the memoir.
Yeah.
What stood out for you?
Yeah, so if you know about Trevor's upbringing, he grew up he was kind of an illegal child. It was a time when white South Africans and black South Africans were not allowed to mingle. They are not supposed to even marry or have any sexual relations. There was actually a law against it. And Trevor is a mixed child. So his life as a child, he didn't even grow up with the father actively in their household, but they were sticking out like a thumb. Trevor was sticking out like a thumb because, first of all, it's kind of a neighborhood that it was they grew up kind of poor, and then now he's going through situations where his life is in danger because you are not supposed to exist. That's why it says born a crime. So yeah, he just narrates his childhood and how he grew up to be who he is today despite those circumstances. And Trevor Noah's mother in this book, she's just a character. She's like one of my favorite people to ever read about because Trevor is funny. So he wrote the book in a very humorous way, but the themes are heavy. And it's a book that I feel like if you know Trevor and you know his work and you know his art, you'd enjoy it more. But even without that background knowledge, it's just a memoir that really cuts across many reader preferences. Yeah.
When you talk about that, I want to reflect locally because a race, tribal, religious factions are quite outstanding in our communities today, and when you look at our settings today,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to marriage, when it comes to relationship, for example, that you've mentioned, people are keen to know which tribe are you dating? Why are you dating that tribe? What are your thoughts on interracial, intertribal, inter?
My thought is no one should even have a thought on this. Yeah, it shouldn't even be a point of concern. Love who you love. Your worry should be your family. You know? I believe that if you've chosen this is the person you want to be with, your worry should be how do I harmonize these different communities. The concern should be how do we bring harmony because we are different, not because this person is from me. How do I explain myself? It's not about explaining yourself. It's about finding a harmonious place where you people can love each other without the gaze and the judgment and all that. So my opinion is, why do I even have an opinion?
Have you ever found yourself in a place where you have to justify this person you're in the relationship with? You have to prove to people why this person needs to be.
Fortunately, I have never experienced that kind of.
Your mom says leta ule mtu utaleta toka
No.
huko. Eh,
No, she has one particular she has one rule. Just don't. Of course, I won't say which, but she has just one exception. Like anyone, but not.
not this.
And it's not even a tribe. It's not even a tribe.
It's a word.
I won't tell you.
That
She has an exception, and I
in a
know
man you're supposed to bring
yeah,
home.
I know it stems out of somewhere, but then it's advisory. It's not cautionary for her. It's not like don't. It's like I think you should not.
Okay. I don't want to prompt that further, but I'm curious. I would want to know. So
Yeah.
let love have the last word.
Yeah.
How do you relate these two books?
Yeah. Also one of the earliest nonfiction books I ever read. Again, I feel like I pick memoirs based on someone I already know about, someone whose art another form of art I already love. Like I used to love commons music when I was growing up. So when you put out a memoir, I was interested to know, especially I love reading people actively talk about love and relationships, and from the synopsis, it just shows you it's a quest for love. Yeah. And as much as memoirs are usually known for name dropping, for celebrities, it's usually name dropping or telling you about his life as a star. I felt like Common wrote this from a very vulnerable place. You can say that he's concerned. You can see that he's concerned about how he's unable to find the kind of love he's looking for. And I feel like that is something that at one point or another someone has felt like, you know what you want but you're not finding that kind of what can I do to find the kind of love I feel I deserve, and what can I do to position myself to accept this love when it comes to me. So I feel it's a very impactful book. I feel like you'd enjoy it more if you're a musician because of the references and because of the industry talk, and because of you'd enjoy, a musician would enjoy it more, but it's just a book a man would enjoy. These two books I recommend to. Ordinarily, when I try to recommend, when I try to find a recommendation from my shelf, I find it easier to recommend books to people my age
Yeah.
and people my gender.
Why do you find it hard to recommend a book to men?
This is the thing. I I feel like 70% of my shelf are women authors, and men pretend not to. Not I say pretend,
Yeah.
but they don't love. They don't like things to do with heavy emotions. So a lot of my books are heavy on the family, emotions, relationships, civil rights. So I have some things to do with civil rights that I can recommend with to men, but then most of them are leaning towards women rights. So as much there are men I can recommend books to, but if you're a stranger, I feel like I would recommend a book to you as a man easily if I knew you at a personal level. But then I have books like this that there are general that I can recommend to everyone.
Yeah.
So I think I find it hard recommending books to men because I don't read a lot of books that are practical or life changing, or those things people look for. Yeah, so that's the thing.
Gentlemen, Joan recommends this too for you. So, Joan, when I'm looking through your shelves, I can realize that you, how do I say it? There are authors you have more than one book from one author.
Yeah.
I can look at this.
Uh-huh.
I can look at
Yeah.
this. I look at, like, how do you do that?
Okay.
Most one of the people I sat with, for example, said that sometimes an author disappoints you on the next one. What?
Yeah.
Why do you go this way, where you buy several titles from the
Okay.
same author?
Okay. I'll answer that question in two parts. So, for example, Toni Morrison up there, I have all her novels. And the reason for this is last year I did a reading challenge called the Completist Challenge, where we read all of Toni Morrison's works, just the novels. We didn't read the nonfiction or the or autobiographies or anything. So I started that challenge because Toni Morrison is an author. People can say this is a quote from Toni Morrison, but people don't know much of her work. And a lot of people find that her writing is intimidating. I was one of those people who are influenced by this. There's an online opinion of who an author is. And I found it best to demystify, try and find out for myself. But instead of trying to find out for myself, I took on a community. We were like 20 of us who were trying to get through all of her works from January 2022 to December 2022. I think a majority of people may read more than 5 books by her. So for that same reason, we're doing Abdul Razak Gurnah this year. That's why I have all his books.
Yeah, I saw that on your Instagram.
Yeah. So also another author we just knew more about him after he won the Nobel Prize for Literature. And for that it was Afterlives people knew about, but now he has 10 novels. So we are reading authors back, what's the word? All their work from the time they first published their books. So that's why I have multiple authors like that. Now, the second part of me answering your question is, once I read an author's work and I love it, I will actively try and get all the books they've ever written. And I try to read authors in the order in which they published books, because I feel like sometimes it's good to grow with the author. So I'll pick the book you first ever published. Like I read Chinto first, then I read The First Woman, and read Manchester afterwards. So I like to keep it safe in terms of authors. If I've read your work and I know you can do no wrong in my eyes, that's what's happening right now with K. Miller. You can see K. Miller over there. I have 3 books by the same author. I want to read everything they've ever written. Yeah, that's my temporary favorite author right now, K. Miller.
Camila is your temporary
Yeah,
favorite.
but this is my forever favorite, Jennifer Makumbi. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So what stood out? How far have you gone with Abdul Razak, and what has stood out for you? Why do you think
Yeah.
he won a Nobel?
Okay. We are at the book number 9, which is Afterlives. Oh, actually, it's the last book. Afterlives is the final book we're reading. But a lot of people have not read the entire collection. Me being one of them, I'm leading the whole group and I haven't finished reading, but I hope to catch up at the end of the year. But the thing we are finding collectively is Abdul Razak writes about similar themes. It's mostly about the immigrant experience, having grown up in Tanzania and then he moved to UK. A lot of his books have that theme, and then it's a theme about a boy who's living an oppressed life back home, trying to find a way to leave that setting. They're not easy books to read. I'm glad I'm reading them with a community because there's a lot of trauma involved. It has given us a glimpse of who Abdul Razak is as a writer. A lot of us tend to think some of these stories are based off of his own life, but he's done interviews where he's discounted that, like, no, this is just a story, don't think too much into it. So yeah, Abdul Razak, it's been a challenge. It's called a reading challenge, but this has been a real challenge, because I feel like you need a break after reading one Abdul Razak book. You can't read them back to back, otherwise you'll get like mental fatigue from trauma.
You are somebody who's read quite a bit,
Yeah.
and I'm looking at the Nobel aspect to it. Why do you think he's even was shortlisted, leave alone even winning it?
Yeah, I feel he's very deserving because of his consistency in highlighting the plight of a boy child. This is a very I'm just guessing about why he was even considered. I think like it's the consistency of highlighting a certain story over the years. Yeah. It's quite impactful. I think it's even has more impact for people who grew up in Tanzania. I would imagine.
One of
Yeah.
the books you've reviewed fondly on your Instagram is this one, and we have to speak about it. Small Worlds.
Yes.
Tell me about it.
Okay, so Small Worlds. Um I cannot talk about Small Worlds without talking about Open Water by the same author. So Caleb is an author who puts his heart into his writing. You can tell that he's really trying for you to understand what he means to say. You know, he's not just writing for. He's not just writing a story. He's pouring his soul into this story. His writing is very poetic, and he has an identity. Like if someone read me some piece of literature from Caleb, from a book I've never read, I'd tell you this is Caleb's writing. It is he has a signature way of writing. The problem with that is that if you don't like that kind of writing,
Yeah.
then you will have trouble getting through his books because it's very, what do I say? I feel like if you like books that are poetic and repetitive, the problem a lot of people have with his work is like there's a lot of repetition. But to me, it makes sense. It's a signature writing style. So, Small Worlds, for instance, is about a man who's trying to find his identity, to know what he wants to do with his life. He's an aspiring musician, and he has kind of a difficult relationship with his father. And also, in his quest to find belonging in terms of relationship, he's having issues because he's never been the kind of person to say what he wants. So I honestly love this book, and even from my review, you can tell I was gushing through it. Yeah, Caleb writes for people who love tenderness. You know, if tenderness is something you look for in books, like you want someone who will explain emotions. The flip side is someone would say he's over descriptive, but me, I want you to make me feel the emotions. I want to feel like I'm there in South London where this book is set, and enjoy the scenery just from how you explain it, even though I have never been to this place. Yeah.
You've put a lot of marks
Yeah.
in what
This
what are these places you've
So I
highlighted?
annotate my books this way. It's a quotable moment, or it's somewhere that just broke my heart. So it's either one of those two things. Yeah.
So I read one piece, and maybe you help us put it into context. This last part, Mom doesn't mention, but she doesn't need to. Grief never ends, but we find a way to walk in the light someone has left behind, rather than living in pain's shadow.
Yeah. So that's a quote about grief. Something I read about a lot. I just like how he handled grief, explaining that there's no template for you to get through a loss. Yeah. So you can handle it however it fits you, with whichever support you have. You just cling onto whatever you have to get through the days. Compartmentalizing, I've come to realize, does not work for grief. But at the time when you're compartmentalizing, it's what feels right to you, right? But just acknowledging that I am grieving, and trying to find a community. For a lot of people, it's not easy to ask for help when you're grieving, because no one can understand what you're going through. But your community can be one person. Your community can be your journal. Just journaling can be your community. Your community can be even a stranger who's podcasting about grief and getting through it. That's community. So I believe community is just the easiest way out of grief.
We live in an era where mental health is an issue of concern, and there are a lot of varied opinions on it. And I read somewhere that people are saying that we are getting weaker psychologically. That's why mental illness has become such a big issue. What are your thoughts?
Getting weaker?
Yes.
I don't believe that's true.
I read something that somebody was comparing mental strength to, for example, the monks, saying there was no time for you to think about weakness, and even the traditional African society where you're going out hunting, you're going, like you're busy, you're up to something, and it worked on your mental strength and even your physical strength.
Yeah.
And that is not there today. What are your thoughts on it?
I disagree. I feel like that strength was conditioned. You know, you're a monk, or you're growing up in an environment that requires you to be strong. So we cannot say these people are not going through it. They're just not letting it what do I say? They are just not acknowledging that I'm going through this, because the environment is not allowing them. But when you look at our situation right now, there are constant reminders. If you're going through a mental thing, whatever, if it's an illness, if it's just feeling the blues, if it's been diagnosed, or if it's just starting out, there are constant reminders, you know? If you're going through something, in your line of work, in your home, there'll be triggers, there'll be reminders. And if you do not what do I say? I'm trying to say that because there are constant reminders about what you're going through, you have to actively seek ways of finding help. Otherwise, the triggers might just bring you down. You understand? So I don't believe in that narrative of us getting weaker. It's just that you are conditioned. Don't you? You're a man. Why? What are you stressed about? You have a roof over your head. What are you stressed about? But now, you cannot function, be a highly functioning human with mental issues without acknowledging the triggers about around you. So you the work you have to do for yourself before seeking help is trying to subdue the triggers, you know. That's what I do for myself. If I notice I'm not in a good mental space, at least I am able to be aware that this is what triggered me, and try to be away from this thing that triggers this kind of reaction from me. Yeah, I know I have deflected, but
No, actually,
I do not
it's
believe in us being
yeah,
a weaker
it's something, and
generation.
I'm
It's
hoping
just
that somebody maybe who is watching can also learn, because I think it's a conversation that must be had. And just to understand, how do you deal with stress? How should somebody deal
yeah,
with stress? Because there are people who are stuck. You're in that place, and sometimes you don't even know how you found yourself there.
yeah,
You know.
yeah,
But now, maybe from listening to other people's
yeah,
experiences and how they are dealing with certain situations, can give somebody an idea to say, oh, so that is how so and so dealt with it.
yeah,
Maybe I
yeah,
can emulate that. And you are actually responding, because my next question was gonna be very specific to
yeah,
ask you, like, how do you deal with stress? How do you get out of that space?
yeah. So this is my escape. This is how I deal with stress. I am a stress reader. It's funny because you see some people when they are stressed out, they get into slumps, reading slumps. But for me, sometimes when I don't want to deal with something mental, I get lost in a book. But apart from that, how I deal with stress is talk to someone. And sometimes I have two specific friends I can just talk to and tell, I don't want your opinion. I don't want you to tell me it's going to be okay. Just let me talk. And then I'll tell you if I need to say something, but I just need to get this out of my chest. And yeah, I've come to realize that in a way, that is what journaling is. I wish I could journal. I think I can journal. I want to try. But that's how I deal with stress. I read or I talk about it. And this talking about it, I think I just learned that this year. I never used to be that kind of a person. I used to be the kind of person everyone comes and talks to. I've just finished crying right now, and then you call me, and then I wipe my tears, and then I listen to you, but I will never tell you what's wrong with me. But at some point, I think maybe in the last 2 years, I just learned to trust people with my story, you know? This is what I'm going through right now. This is the kind of support I need. Yeah, that's how I deal with
How did
stress.
you get there? Because it's a very difficult place to get to.
You know what? You wouldn't believe if I told you I learned that from these things, from this my babies seeing, telling me it's okay to talk about things, it's okay to trust someone with what you're going through. Just collect. I can't even pinpoint a book that told me this is a different way of dealing with stress, but I feel like that's why I gravitate towards books that are very vulnerable, are written with that have very vulnerable characters in terms of their emotions, in terms of their needs, in terms of their fears. You know, sometimes stress just comes from fear, right? You're fearing this thing, or you're fearing this transition. Yeah, so I think it's just learning from other people's stories.
Yeah.
There's always help when you talk to someone.
How would you describe your relationship with books? And I'm really encouraged that you started later. You're not
Yeah.
like this was a culture
Yeah.
growing up, and you started later and you've gotten into it. How now would you describe your relationship with books?
Books have taken over my life. It is now a part of my routine. I make time to read every day. I find myself in situations where I spark conversations about books when I didn't even think about. Let's say, for instance, at I where I work, there are sometimes when I meet a person who's carrying a book that I know, and I can hardly keep it to myself. I have to talk to you about this book. Sometimes I'm in a bookshop and then someone is picking up a book and then I give my unsolicited opinion. Let me give you a very strange example. I moved into this house very recently, and that's the day I knew books have really taken over my life, because I considered this book because I saw a corner that's perfect for my bookshelf. In another house I would go to and I see where would my bookshelf fit, and the house doesn't work for me. So my relationship with books, as of now, books are an integral part of my life. I cannot imagine my life without my bookish friends. For example, my friends that started out as people I just discussed books with have become lifetime friends for me. And I like that I've gotten to a part where my opinion about bookish stuff matters to people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I look at your shelf, I realize that there are very few Kenyan or East African titles. Why is that so?
Okay. Let me let other people judge if this is few. But this up to here, this is my entire Kenyan
Yeah.
collection. And sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
I think this is Kenyan and East Africa. This is Somaliland, but the rest of them are Kenyan. I have a bias when it comes to Kenyan books, and I will not even mince my words with this one. The few Kenyan books that I've loved, actually they're quite a number. Some of them I had to unhaul from my shelf. The reason I'm bringing these two books out is because I want to show you the quality of that book, of the print. Same with
Mikali and the
this book.
Forbidden Mask.
Yeah. Like I said, even this one, like I said, I'm a very aesthetic person. So I love, yes, your book is good. You've written a good story. It's gone through good editing. It's been published, not just in Kenya, in other parts of the world. But when you present your book to me as a reader, I need to love how the book looks. I need to love how the book feels. Unfortunately, for my case, sometimes I feel like I struggle with the kind of production of Kenyan books. Like either the print is off or the quality is off, and I'd rather not buy a book until it's out in an edition that I can appreciate. I give you this book specifically because even this one, look at how beautiful this book is. Even if I'd never heard about Troy Onyango, or if I have never read anything by them, this is a book that would draw me to them. As shallow as it sounds, it's something that matters to me. I've had that problem with a lot of books, because even when I go to a bookshop and I see a section of some of these books, not just Kenyan books, honestly, if the quality of the print is not appealing to me, I will not buy the book. So maybe that's a problem. But also, apart from just the quality of the books, I buy books that the story appeals to me. So if patriotism aside, I will not just buy a book because it's by a Kenyan author. It needs to be a story I want to read. So if I get crucified for this or not, I'm just speaking my truth.
So what's your take now? Because that now book sometimes it's because of cost, and
Yeah.
putting together and publishing is very expensive. What's your take on piracy?
Oh my God. I have very strong opinions on that that will rub people the wrong way, but I will say what I say. There's this phrase people usually use to describe relationships or intentions of a man when they're trying to get a lady. The phrase is, if he wants to, he will. That's the word. If he wants to, he will. And I believe in the same logic when it comes to books. People tend to use the excuse of books being expensive for them not buying books from the right channels. But I feel like if you're really interested in a book and you respect an author's works, you will make the effort to afford this book. Even in other forms, you cannot afford a physical copy. You can afford an audiobook from a legal platform, not just an audiobook you buy at 50 shillings. So I feel people don't respect books in my city, in my country. People don't respect books enough to buy books, you know? So I, in my own small capacity, I have become an online bully in this regard. I have no apologies. I see a pirated book, I will ask you, are you aware the book you're reading is pirated? Because some books are so badly produced, you can tell that they are pirated at a glance online. I have not seen the book physically, but I can already tell you this book is pirated. If I ask you and you're not aware, I'll try and educate you, like where you can buy a book, legit copies, where you can buy second-hand books of the same book, where you can get a deal for this book. But if I come and tell you, are you aware this book is pirated? And you say yes, and you give an excuse, I'll just leave you alone, because what can I do? What can I do?
Have you ever had an experience
Yeah.
with a pirated book?
I have. There's, what book was I trying to buy? I was trying to buy a Chimamanda book. I don't remember. Maybe it was Purple Hibiscus. So one day I'm in the office. I was pretty new on Instagram. Maybe it was about 2014. And then a bookshop pops up. Was it an, I think it was either, it was a friend of mine. I don't think we were big on ads that time. I think it was a friend of mine who used to have an account and then they sold it to a business. People used to do that a lot. So it's a page I'm following. I realize it's a bookshop. So I think it's an account that was changed to a bookshop. Now they post this Purple Hibiscus book. I see it and the price is friendly because they already had it on my wish list. So I know it's around 1800, and then these people post it for 800. And they post a legit copy of this book. Like they went to maybe Google and downloaded an image and posted the book. I sent the money immediately. They sent it to my office. When I got the copy, it was such a badly pirated book. Like, you see the way a page, even looking at it already, I knew this book feels off. This cover is like light. It's like half the thickness of this, and then when you open, the writing is like half the page here. This is the entire, like, if the story is this size, these margins were not making sense. The margins are like this. That's actually the easiest way to know a pirated copy, apart from the cover. And then I call this person, I tell them, are you aware you sold me a pirated copy? And then they call it a generic. Yeah, it's a generic copy. I just sent it back to them. I told them I don't even want a refund. Just forget this happened. They actually sent me my refund back and sent me a long DM asking me not to out them. I wasn't going to do that because my account then wasn't even a bookish account. But I felt so offended That was my one experience. Now, as I grew as a reader, I'm able to identify a pirated copy. I know where to buy the right kind of books. And yeah, the options are limitless. If you really want a book, just wait until you can afford this book. Even now, there are some upcoming library services in Nairobi. I will just highlight two that I know. It's actually cheaper to borrow. If you're not someone who's like obsessed with owning their own copies like me, if you don't mind borrowing, there's the Bookworm Gigiri, where you can borrow books from. There's another new library service called the Pocket Libraries. There are options. You do not need to be stealing from an author in 2023. It doesn't feel like stealing to you. You feel like you're supporting the work of the author. You're not, because the money never gets back to them. It's getting back to the hands of a thief, a Kenyan thief. You're literally putting money in the hands of a thief. Yeah, as radical as it sounds, that's the
Ouch.
reality.
Yes.
That's the reality. So if you wanted to buy a legit copy, you would find your ways.
John, you and I can talk about books for the whole day.
Yeah.
And there's still so many things I want to ask you. And there are posts I've seen where you stack books according to colors.
Yeah.
You play around with books. That is very interesting.
Yeah.
And what do you say? What I'm trying to understand. Did all your siblings turn out like this?
Yeah.
And did you all went into books? Did you all go into books, or what is it that has kept you going ever since you started?
Okay. I don't think my siblings read as much. At least none that I know of. I know my brother recently was reading this book, The Diary of a Young Girl. George, if you're watching this, I hope you finished the book. But apart from that, I haven't seen. I don't think my siblings read that much. Maybe they do, but not actively in a way that I can say confidently that they do. Yeah, but I guess I'm doing it for the family. I don't.
You're reading enough for us.
Yes,
Do you
yes.
have books that have been signed by the authors?
Oh, I have so many books that have been signed. Let me just start with this one. It's signed by Nadifa Mohammed. I got this signed at the first Macondo festival I ever attended. Signed by Nadifa. And then my copy of Paradise by Abdul Razak is signed. I also got it signed from the 2022 Macondo Festival. Macondo Festival is a literary event that happens once a year. I got all my copies by Jennifer Makumbi signed. That's the highlight of my year. I got them signed this year. My copy of The Memory of Love also. This one over here. It's an unread book. This one by a Kenyan author. It's signed. Yeah. I have like maybe 30 of my books are signed.
Wow.
Yeah.
You also mentioned before we started.
Maybe 20, not 30. Yeah. Oh, wait. I really have to show you this one.
Sure.
This one, The Secret Lives of Baba Segi's Wives.
This one?
Yeah. A friend of mine called Amira went to Nigeria, went to the author's bookstore, told them that I exist. So Lola knows there's a Joan Mero in this world. And she signed the book with my name for Joan Mero. A friend of mine got me the gift. I had lost my copy a long time ago, but she had it signed in Nigeria and she brought it back home as a gift.
The Secret Lives of Baba Segi's Wives.
Yeah. This is the first book I ever recommend to someone who wants to get into reading. Yes.
Why?
Because it's just drama. It's just a dramatic book. It's just like reading Nollywood.
Okay.
It's very funny. You'll get through this. If you dedicate a day, you'd finish this book in a day. It's this book has no has no flaw in my eyes. It's just a perfectly written story. It's another book I want to reread soon. Yeah, Lola Shonein. I wish she could put out more books because we've been waiting for years.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah.
There are authors also who now send you books for review. Do you have
Yeah.
any that maybe you've been sent?
Yes, this one I was sent to by Akin Bogon. It's a 2-in-1 book.
A Waste of Sin.
Yeah. I am yet to read it. But I also have these Kenyan books that were poetry collection that were sent to me by Kendi Karimi. I loved these poetry collections called The Cages We Built. And then she put out another novel. And then there's Tasha Ipato. I have a couple of review copies sent to me. This was also a review copy sent to me by Cassava Publishers from a South African author. This one by a Zimbabwean author sent to me by Cassava. Yeah, I have a couple. Even this one was a review copy.
What time do you read, Joan? How many hours do you have in a day?
I have 24 hours like everyone, but like I said, reading is like eating to me. It's part of my life. It's something I have to do every day unless I'm not in a position to.
What's your reading habit? What is that practice that you've picked up and you've maintained?
Yeah. I used to read in the morning every the first hour before I get out of bed. I used to read in bed for like 1 hour, but that was a long time ago before my work schedule changed. Right now I work shifts, so there are days when I'm off at home, but apart from that I just make sure I read every day. My best time to read is in the morning, before the world wakes up, before the noise, before I just find it's a very sacred time to read.
Okay.
But also nowadays, because of circumstances, I've taught myself to read any time of day. When I have a few hours, when I have a few idle hours, I'd rather be reading than do anything else. I regret that it has taken me away from watching film or movies or series. I want to go back to doing that because this is just one form
How
of
would you
stories.
compare the two experiences?
Um,
Especially looking at it, most of the films are fiction, and now sometimes
Yeah.
you're reading, most of the novels are also fiction.
yeah.
How would you compare the two experiences?
I feel like my reading has influenced my kind of the kind of things I watch. Like I said, I like a lot of stories to do with families and generational patterns and all that. And that translates to even the things I watch. Two of my favorite shows. One is called A Million Little Things. I just started watching it. I'm in the second season. And another one is called This Is Us. And if you look at the two shows, you'll see that both of them are like families over time. How have the decisions made by grandparents, how are those decisions affecting the children today? I like stories like that. But also, now that I don't watch a lot, I like watching adaptations. Like if I read a book and there's a movie based off of it, I will try and find the movie. I've read Beloved and watched the movie. There's another book called White Tiger. I read the book, watched the adaptation. The Color Purple, I watched the first movie, but there's another adaptation coming out soon. I'll watch that as well. There's also a couple of books that have movies coming up,
Yeah.
2024, 2025. So yeah, I don't watch much, but I watch adaptations.
It's interesting you say that. I've watched the movie Half a Yellow Sun. I've not read the book, but from the people who watched the movie and read the
Yeah.
book, felt like the movie.
Yeah, I'm one of those people. I loved the book. I feel like the movie did nothing for the book, but yeah, it's okay.
Why? Why was that? Where was that disparity?
There are some very important scenes that were taken out. I can't remember which ones exactly, but I feel like this is a scene you should have spent even just 1 minute on it, because it was a big part of the plot. But because of, I don't know if it's budget or time, or I know you can't have a 4 hours movie, so you can't put the whole book in the movie, but it's just immoral to remove some parts of the book in the movie. It was very frustrating for me when I watched Half of a Yellow Sun. And I feel like even the impact, because that book ends, the way it ends, there's a question for everyone. Yeah, where is this person? But when you watch the movie, the impact is not the same.
There's a book you mentioned. I'm trying to look for it because you said you'd really want to mention something about it. Was it?
Oh wait, is it a Broken People's Playlist?
I think Broken.
Yeah, this is the best short story collection I have ever read. Yeah, so A Broken People's Playlist by Chimeka Garrix. The best short story collection I have ever read. I recommend this book to a lot of people. Like I said, I took a break from shouting about Chintu to shout about A Broken People's Playlist. It's let me tell you, if you ever feel like you need to read a book to get you out of a reading slump, this is the book I'd recommend. It's based off, each book starts with a song. Like if you open the first story. I mean, each story starts with a song. It's signed.
Nice.
So you see, like Lost Stars, I think it's a it's a song by a famous band. I forget the name of the band, but the story relates to this song. So all the stories in here, see the track list. I think it's a very ingenious way of writing a book, and the stories are just delectable.
I think
it's based in Port Harcourt, Nigeria.
When you say broken people's play, the broken people, first of all,
yeah, they are broken people. In all the people are broken. Yes. So,
Joan, I want to say thank you so much. There is so much I still want to talk about, and especially if I'm linking your shelf and your Instagram, because there is so much I can relate to that I wish I can have all the time to talk about.
Yeah.
That now today I'm seeing and meeting them physically, as opposed to the from afar that we see on your Instagram.
Yeah.
But just to say, it's a beautiful thing that you're doing, and I'm really, really glad that you are a voice in that space. And thank you for allowing us an opportunity to sit by your shelf and just interact with a snippet of the knowledge that you've picked from all these books. But also you can follow Joan on Instagram and the initiatives she's running, even though she doesn't want to talk about initiatives. She has a fantastic book culture that when you go through her Instagram, it is hard for me to even pinpoint one, because you're doing a number of things other than you reading, other than the reviews. There are also the events that you're holding around books. Check her out. What's your page? Tell them again.
My page is Joan Zoya on Instagram, and my events page is BookstaMeet KE.
Joan Zoya on Instagram. BookstaMeet also on Instagram. Check them out and see how you can be part of that community. Joan, as I conclude,
yes,
if you're to recommend for me one book from your shelf, what will that be and why?
For you, is this a curated? Okay, if it's for you specifically, I'd recommend. Educated by Tara Westover. Yes, and the reason I recommend this is because I just read it. It's very fresh in my head. Also, I selfishly want you to suffer the way I suffered when I was
Okay.
reading this book.
All right.
Yeah. And you also told me you enjoy stories to do with history and politics.
Politics, yes.
There's subtle mentions of politics in terms of someone who wants to live off the radar, no dependence on the government. Is very mistrusting of the government. Yeah, I think you'd enjoy this book.
All right.
I use the word enjoy
As I
very
suffer.
lightly. Yeah, you will suffer, but you will enjoy.
All right.
Yes.
That's why I close it. Guys, that's where we end it. And thank you so much, Joan.
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to go suffer with Educated. Thank you so much also for watching. And if at all you've not subscribed, feel free to do that. Like, comment, tell us what you think about the conversation we've had with Joan here today. What stood out for you? What is that one thing that you've had today that you feel like you want us to continue that conversation? But above everything else, check out her pages and
BookstaMeet KE.
BookstaMeet.
Yes.
Which is on Instagram.
Yes.
All right. So BookstaMeet KE. Let's hang out. Let's check out those events. And you said they are paid for events?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go and pay for those events. See you again on the next one. This has been What's on Your Shelf. Until next time. Bye.